We had a big discussion a moment ago about whether or not he's saying anything we didn't know already, just more plain spoken. What did you learn?
Yeah, well, what I think that the story reflects is the deep unease at the company. You're right. Mark Zuckerberg is being mostly very politic and diplomatic here. But what you hear in the audio and you see in the transcripts is employee after employee coming forward to talk about their unease with what's going on. And so that was my main takeaway, is people inside Facebook are rattled by this threat of government intervention.
Casey, he also talked about your story earlier this year about how Facebook is having contractors moderate content. His response to that was interesting to me. I mean, some of these contractors have just had some troubling psychological effects, as you documented. He was kind of dismissive of that, kind of saying, yeah, it's a concern, but called the report overdramatic.
Yeah, and, I think if you think these reports are overdramatic, I'd encourage you to talk with any of the moderators I spoke with about the post-traumatic stress disorder that they have come down with after doing this job, sometimes for just a few months. So, while it's certainly true that, not everyone has a terrible experience doing that job, the fact is there are very real mental health consequences for doing it. And I don't think the folks that I spoke with would have, called their own stories overdramatic.
Roger, you have a deep knowledge of this company. You've had meetings with Mark Zuckerberg. What did you think of the audio?
Well, so first of all, I need to compliment Casey on an extraordinary piece of journalism. He's been rocking it, this story, from the beginning. So I think there are a few things that stand out. The first thing is that, as Casey said, employees are beginning to push back, and somebody leaked this to Casey. That is a huge deal. To my understanding, this is only the second time something's been leaked by active employees, and that represents something really interesting. But to me, the really important thing is that Mark doesn't appear to have learned anything. He's looking at this like it's okay for him not to testify before Parliament in the United Kingdom or Canada, two of his largest markets. So he's just too important to do that kind of stuff. And that secondly, that the antitrust issues that have been raised here are in some way, something he can dismiss and fight in court, when I think there are underlying issues going on here that are really, really, really substantive. He doesn't seem to understand that this is a bipartisan issue, that the threat to Facebook, but also to Google, Microsoft, and Amazon from antitrust is based on the fact that they're really harming innovation in the economy, and they've done a lot of damage to democracy, public health, privacy as well. And so I look at this and just say, wow. I mean, Mark he's learning a lot about how to do politics. Facebook's PR has been amazing this year, but he doesn't seem in this particular audio string to be the kind of thoughtful, forward-looking person that he ought to be, given all the things that are going on.
Well, Casey, Roger may be right that opposition to the firm is somewhat bipartisan, but that's not an issue here. If it goes to court, it'll be a judicial question.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you hear Mark Zuckerberg saying they're ready to fight really hard. They think that they can win that case. And, of course, they've been working as hard as they can to knit Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram together this year so that if and when President Warren emerges and tries to break up the company, it's going to be as hard as possible for regulators to split it up. So they are actively working to undermine any case that comes up down the road.
Roger, he calls in the audio, Zuckerberg does, this an existential issue, the idea of breaking up Facebook. I think that's a pretty strong word, but arguably one that any CEO who's put a company together from multiple pieces might use. What's your take?
Well, my take is that investors should be applauding antitrust action here. We've just seen the IPO market blow up in smithereens because these companies, as monopolists, have managed to force venture capitalists into other sectors which haven't produced the same kind of high-quality business models that you would normally see at the heart of the Internet. And I think we will see that what happens here in antitrust is the same thing that happened when AT&T was initially regulated and then taken apart, when IBM was regulated, when Microsoft was regulated, which is it will unleash a whole new next big thing that will be much bigger than what we have today and much better for investors. I think that the issues that Mark has, of course he feels threatened. He's put this vision together, but at the same time, he's acted irresponsibly. I think the company has acted irresponsibly. And it's clearly within their rights to fight legally in any way they can. But the notion here that Elizabeth Warren is the only one who is a threat to him is laughable. Senator Warren has a very clear understanding of the issues here, and breaking these companies up, I suspect, again, I can't speak for her, but I suspect she knows that breaking them up is the end of a process, not the beginning, that the right thing to do is to restore the ability for competitors to operate by essentially narrowing the space that Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft can operate in, by making sure their intellectual property is available to startups and that their infrastructure is available to startups to build their own audience, which is what was done to AT&T before the breakup.
Casey, you mentioned unease among employees, which is part of how you ended up with these comments from Zuckerberg and has certainly contributed to a lot of your reporting. How would you categorize that? I mean, what is the morale of the workforce within Facebook based on the conversations you've had? And what does it mean for, I guess, the future of the company and the folks that Zuckerberg was trying to address in those very comments?
It's a great question, Morgan. And one part of the audio that stands out to me is when an employee comes forward and says, hey, what do we tell our friends who don't like Facebook anymore? And that's such an extraordinary thing, I think, for an employee to be asking the CEO, right? For a long time, working at Facebook has been a badge of honor. I think lately it's become a little less comfortable to talk about at a cocktail party. And there's a very real effect for the company, which is that it is harming their recruiting efforts. We saw earlier this year some reporting that suggested that the percentage of people who are offered a job at Facebook who accept that offer has been declining this year. And it's clearly in direct result of the sort of scandals that we've seen over the past couple of years. So basically, everything we've seen over the past couple of years has contributed to making it harder for Facebook to recruit. And if they have trouble recruiting, it threatens everything at the company.